There is something I need to say that might not be very popular. If you've been on any kind of awakening or spiritual path for a while, you've probably already felt the disconnect. Something doesn't quite add up. Because what we've been taught about awakening is not the full truth. And in some ways, it's an outright lie. This is not because awakening isn't real, but because the way it's been presented to you can actually keep you stuck, confused, and quietly questioning your own worth. By the end of this video, you will understand why I say that spiritual awakening is not about ascending. Understanding this will make all the difference in how you move through your own awakening process. My name is Elisa, and I created the Rebel Crone to help women in the awakening process to move through it with a clear understanding of what is actually happening to them. Now, I consider myself a practical spiritualist. I have learned through living my life, questioning reality, and listening for the answers, and then, most importantly, to test them out through my own personal experience. I ask you to do the same with what I'm saying. Contemplate what I'm about to say, and then test it out for yourself. To understand the awakening process, we must first consider what you've been told. We don't have to go very deep or dwell on the message because it's abundantly clear. When you go through this process, you will feel peace, clarity, alignment, love, and light, a sense that everything finally makes sense and everything will now work smoothly in your life. You know the images. We are surrounded by them all the time. Gorgeous setting suns, even more gorgeous people doing their sun salutations, birds chirping in the woods, and people really content with themselves. They all paint a picture that once you wake up, you'll feel better, lighter, and more centered in yourself. That your life will somehow rise above the challenges you have been experiencing. But for many women, especially as they get older, that's not what happens at all. What actually happens is this. When you go through an awakening process, you start to see things you didn't see before. The borders of who you thought you were begin to shift. The roles you play no longer feel authentic. The expectations you've lived by, you start to wonder if they may not be yours at all. The identity you built your life around doesn't seem to fit anymore. Things that once made sense don't. Things that once motivate you don't either. Things that once felt like you start to feel unfamiliar. You can start to feel like you're coming unglued. I'm going to share something from my own experience. I have learned that the awakening process doesn't happen overnight, nor is it a one-and-done process. Awakening unfolds in layers, over years, sometimes even over decades. For me, it's been a lifelong process that to this day is still unfolding. What I found is that each time a layer drops away, there's a moment of shock because the edges of what I thought I was have started to dissolve. And when that happens, there's a strange mix of excitement, relief, fear, and even disorientation, and sometimes all of them at the same time. I have found that going through the process doesn't feel comfortable and sometimes can be quite disconcerting. And it all depends on how I handle the process, of my knowledge of what the process really is. And herein lies the challenge and the lie. Now, this is where we're going to go deeper because this is the part that's rarely talked about. Most people are taught to reach upwards in their awakening. Reach upwards and outwards. Aim for the stars. Raise your vibration. Transcend reality. But here's the problem. Only one of those is correct. And we'll get to that in a minute. But first, I want to ask you something. If you're always trying to rise above your life, do you ever take the time to fully question it? Because with each attempt to pull yourself out of your experience, you can actually separate further from the truth of who you are. You may think you're transcending, but often you're simply disconnecting. That's what's known as spiritual bypassing, trying to bypass being a human, being you. Here's the shift I promised earlier. What if awakening isn't about ascending at all? What if it's about the opposite? What if spiritual awakening is really a process of descending, not rising above your life or out of your life, but finally being in it? Not leaving yourself behind, but finally meeting yourself underneath everything you were taught to be. It is imperative to raise your vibration, don't get me wrong, but to do it as you fully commit to being you and in a body. We can simplify it by saying that ascension tries to take you out of your life, descension brings you back into it, and that's where the magic really happens. So let's be honest, you came here on Earth for a reason. There is no need to rush getting out of here. It will happen soon enough. Everyone will ascend at some point in time. That is a guarantee. But while you are still alive, the goal is to fully arrive in it, to be fully who you are. What I've seen in my own life and in other women is that the real change doesn't happen by escaping. It happens by being here, by uncovering and claiming who you are, to claim all the parts that we've hid from ourselves. And that process entails being fully in your body and in your experiences. You don't need to become someone new. You don't need to transcend out of who you are. You only need to remember who you are. Ladies, this is where age becomes a gift. Because as a woman gets older, there's a natural pull inwards, a clearing of sorts. Not because she's done anything wrong, but because something is ready to emerge, to be seen, to be questioned, to be reclaimed. I can tell you this, I no longer have the energy to pretend or to play along with a life that doesn't feel true. And I also don't have the desire to pretend like I have transcended it all, when I know that the real work comes from being honest and being present and fully in this life. And sometimes that doesn't feel particularly good. But becoming more authentic in spite of how it feels, now that's priceless. This is the part that no one likes to admit. You can't rush the process of awakening. When you dive into yourself, when you commit to being you, every layer you uncover takes time to integrate. And if you try to skip that or bypass that, you end up more disconnected, not less. So if you feel like you're moving slowly or going through cycles of alternating clarity and confusion, that doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It means something real is happening. You're not falling apart. You are coming back to yourself. You are choosing to claim this life as you. So here's something to sit with. What if awakening isn't here to make your life feel better? What if it's here to make your life more honest? What if what you're experiencing right now is not the breakdown of your life, but the unraveling of everything that was never truly you? What if the whole goal is not ascension? What if it's the opposite? What if the goal of life is to fully descend, to fully become you? If this resonates with you, I created something to help you move through this process more clearly. It's called the 5 Layers to Shed, Find Yourself Again. In it, I walk you through what actually begins to fall away as you start awakening to the truth of who you are, when you start remembering who you are. This guide is available to you as a gift. All you need to do is to click on the link below in the description to claim it. If you're going through an awakening experience and feeling uncomfortable, if things are shifting, if you are seeing more clearly than you ever have before, congratulations, you're waking up, not to something outside of you, but to yourself. You are in the process of the sacred discension. Welcome back to yourself. From that place, you don't have to escape this world. You change how you live in it. If enough people decide to fully descend, then this world has a chance of shifting into a more aligned reality. I strongly believe that it starts with you and I. Welcome to the awakening process. Welcome to descending into who you really are.